think we're being too tough on Oregon and its vaccine rollout, and on seniors who are upset they can't get the shot, and teachers who are being blamed for cutting the line, and
how are people getting these invitations to get vaccinated? It's a mystery.
So let's talk about it tonight. And apparently, a white supremacist who murdered an Ethiopian immigrant is out of prison, showing up at pro-Trump rallies around Oregon and not being very discreet about it. And in today's news cycle, people forget big stories pretty quickly. But when you're an Oregon lawmaker who let violent protesters into the state capitol on camera...
We believe that Representative Mike Neerman should be removed from office if he doesn't immediately resign.
Here's the story.
Hey, all right, let's go. It's Monday. It feels so Monday-ish today, I can't even tell you. It doesn't matter, because we're here. Let's enjoy it. I'm Dan Haggerty. This is the story. All the ways that you can reach out and talk to us at the bottom of your screen. Use that hashtag, HeyDan. My tie is fuchsia, not pink. So I was sitting at home yesterday. I was watching football, and I got this email that kind of surprised me a little bit. And I wanted to read some of it to you right now. It came from a guy named Wayne. He wrote me, he said he's a fan of the show, but in the last few weeks, I've been uncomfortable and disappointed in feeling that the tone of the show has become decidedly darker, more negative and snarky. It feels like you're drifting more toward gotcha journalism, ready to catch people screwing up. So Wayne goes on and he says, one quick example. You reported recently on Governor Brown's COVID press conference in Beaumont that you or anyone else at KGW did not get to ask a question. But the governor at that press conference had 45 minutes worth of information from her and her other experts. You and your staff could not glean any answers to those questions from that briefing. So Wayne, thank you first of all for writing in. And I think I know what you mean. It does seem pretty easy for me to sit up here and kind of Monday morning quarterback every decision the state makes, especially it can feel snarky when I end it by buttoning up the coverage with a we're all in this together sort of thing. But if I'm going to understand that, I kind of need you to understand where we're coming from as well, because we need to ask these questions. We have to ask these questions, and for specific reasons. For one, the state works for you, Wayne, and everybody else at home watching this show. And they're partnering, the state is partnering with private companies like hospitals to roll out this life-saving vaccine, this economy-saving, education-saving, mental anguish-saving, unemployment, financial ruin, homelessness, physical abuse, divorce-saving vaccine. The list goes on and on and on, and we must hold them accountable. And that means asking questions about what they do, why they do it, and what they have planned next. And you asked if we gleaned anything from the 45 minutes of statements that were made. Of course we did, just like everybody else who was at home watching that happen live on KGW. But you have to think of it this way. Think about it like this. If your kid came to you and said, hey, my friend is having a sleepover, all the friends that you know will be there, and I'll text you before bed. Well, you have gleaned a lot from that conversation, but you're going to want a few follow-up questions. Now imagine those kids are distributing a vaccine that would save tens of thousands of lives and reopen the state of Oregon. We are not cheerleaders for the state, and the state doesn't expect us to be. Now, after our reporting on vaccine line jumping, almost all of the mass vaccination events have been invite only, except at the fairgrounds in Salem, where you don't need an appointment, which has frustrated a lot of people, considering Oregon is still struggling to get through that 1A group of healthcare workers. Today and tomorrow, 1A people will get shots in Portland at the convention center, and then starting Wednesday, teachers too. And that sounds great. That sounds a whole lot like progress. But the Department of Education, they put out this bulletin warning people that while there are 152,000 teachers and people in that category who are eligible for the shots, there are only 85,000 doses, to which all the math teachers said, yikes. Now, I just gave you a bunch of information. I'm on my pedestal talking. Do you have questions? You should. I still do. Like, can we move on to teachers when people in the 1A group still don't know how to get the vaccine? Here's Kristen Severance.
It's so busy. Everybody's needing help. Everybody's experiencing anxiety, depression, trauma, all kinds of things. So
Gwen Welch and her husband run the Healing Haven, a group practice of mental health practitioners with offices in 4 Oregon cities. They're able to see some patients over Zoom, but not all.
And as you can imagine, when somebody tells you that they're suicidal and you're on a telehealth call, it's not a sufficient way of conducting therapy. an in-office appointment is needed.
Which is why she's been trying to get her 15 employees the COVID vaccine.
So tell me, how has it been trying to figure out how to get you and your staff vaccinated?
Very impossible. Really impossible. I kind of just accidentally stumbled upon a form that needed to be filled out, asking, if we were in this group. And once you get to the end of filling out the form, deciding, yes, you are in Group 1A, there's absolutely no way to find out from there where to go, how to go, when to go.
2 weeks ago, we told you help was on the way thanks to county health departments. People in 1A who were not part of a hospital system had to fill out a survey and would then be contacted by a county health official and told where to go to get the shot. 5,000 people filled out the form for themselves and their coworkers. More than 56,000 people were on the list, and most of them are still waiting, according to Multnomah County health officials. Like retired nurse Kate Wood. Wood has been volunteering at COVID testing sites. She filled out the form January 12th and is not any closer to getting a shot.
How are people getting these invitations to get vaccinated? It's a mystery.
I found out this whole survey idea was set up before Governor Kate Brown opened up the category to teachers. County health officials told me there is just not enough vaccine to go around. In a statement, they said we are working with OHA and the healthcare systems to make sure that 1A populations have the same way to access vaccines as educators and others who became eligible today. We want to emphasize that there are still thousands of people in 1A in the metro counties who have not received their first dose of vaccine, and it may take several weeks or months for this to happen. Not the news anyone, especially these 1A workers, wanted to hear.
And we're very glad that we were placed in the appropriate group. But if you can't go any further with that, with finding out where to get the vaccine, then it's not doing us much good. So it's just kind of been a very frustrating experience.
Dan, my big question to county health officials, should people even be using that survey? They told me technically it's still live, people can sign up, but they did caution that thousands of people in 1A are still waiting for the vaccine.
Okay, let's talk to Tim Gordon for just a second. Up in the Vancouver area, let's focus on Clark County and Washington. We know that they have a mass vaccination site that's going to be opening at the Clark County Fairgrounds tomorrow, which have some people feeling excited about getting the vaccine. But I'll be honest with you, I was on the phone today with a woman who is in her 80s from Vancouver, said she doesn't have the internet, she can't get through on any phone lines, and the two of us kind of sat there for 20 minutes trying to figure out what to do, and I didn't really have a great answer for her at the end of that conversation. So what is the real feeling up there, and are people confident that they're going to be able to get a lot of people shots?
All right. Well, I'm really sorry for her, and I hope that we can maybe help her get lined up. But the fact is, this new site that's going to be run by the state of Washington, starting tomorrow morning, they've got 3,000 doses roughly to administer this week. So it's a pretty good load of doses. Problem is, they're already all reserved. They're all spoken for. People who had already signed up and gotten in there get those shots. So there are none available for this week. And the problem is, the state doesn't have a good system for getting people signed up for the following weeks, the weeks to come, in part because of a technical issue that they're working on, and also in part because they don't know what their allotment will be in the coming weeks coming from the federal government. So you don't want to sign up too many people and not have the vaccine to give them. So it's kind of a twofold problem. But the bottom line is that nice older woman who wants to get signed up is frustrated for good reason. The website won't let her sign up, and if she had internet, sign up online right now, and calling in has been really futile for a lot of people. Now, I will tell you, if you can go to kgw.com and look at my web story for today, article I just wrote, I've got a couple different phone numbers you can use to set up an alternative number that could help with this calling in issue where people are calling in, can't get through, calls are getting dropped and that kind of thing. But the good news is the vaccine is coming. This is the very start of it for the Clark County Fairgrounds, and there's more to come in the coming weeks. But getting signed up right now is a real hassle. I recommend a lot of patience and persistence trying online and making the calls to those people.
Yeah, just a call out to all the people out there. Help your grandparents out with this, because I've been talking to a lot of older folks who are just not navigating the online world very well in this environment right now. You're a great person to talk to because you've been covering these stories on both sides of the Columbia. Of course, you're kind of our expert in Washington right now, but you were also covering some stuff in Oregon, another mass vaccination site in Portland this weekend. How did that go?
Right. Well, we know the convention center's up and running, and that's good. But we actually covered a mass vaccination setup at Portland International Airport in the Red Economy lot, which is all set up for a drive-through vaccination system. And OHSU is doing this for folks with disabilities and their caregivers, whether they're family members in-home or professional caregivers as well. It was a 4-day event, and they vaccinated thousands of people over those 4 days. So that was certainly a good setup, and it's one now that they hope that they can improve on. They actually did about, I think it was 3,300 in the 4 days. But they're going to leave it set up in that outdoor parking lot at PDX. And their hope is that they can get this thing mass vaccination going to 10,000 people a day. Of course, all this hinges, Dan, on having the vaccine. And that's where a lot of the holdup is getting that vaccine from the federal government in enough quantities to really make those mass vaccination sites, 10,000 a day, that kind of thing, happen consistently.
You said it. All right, Tim Gordon, thank you, sir. There is progress, right? We are seeing a little bit. We want to check in right now on how Oregon is doing with the vaccine overall. As of today, more than 263,000 people have gotten at least their first dose of a vaccine. And some people in that group have gotten their second, but for the most, it's just been one. Now, if we divide that number into the state's population, that means a little more than 6% of Oregonians have been vaccinated so far. We want to get to around 75% for herd immunity to work. So we're going to be checking back with these numbers for quite some time.
Oregon's got a new Secretary of State, and she wants to make sure we all know that means she's second in command.
Did you just create a new position in the state, or what did you mean exactly by that? Because Oregon doesn't have a lieutenant governor.
And we're going into the KGW vault to revisit an infamous murder that got Portland branded as Skinhead City. When the story continues.
I was checking messages during the break. I was told my tie is berry, not fuchsia. I'll allow it. Welcome back. We're celebrating a birthday this week, not mine. It is the show's birthday. We launched 1 year ago this week, and we were just curious some of your favorite moments from the show over this past year. We kind of talked about the year wrap when we ended 2020 to go into 2021, but this is more of our technical birthday. And I bet you the things you're thinking about are a lot different than what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about like when I drew the infamous exploding whale on a whiteboard because we didn't have video. That's something I enjoyed doing, but I wanted to know what you enjoyed because the show's all about, doing what you guys want us to do, covering the stories you want us to cover. So let us hear it. Use that hashtag #HeyDan. I do want to touch a little bit more on that email I talked about at the top of the show from Wayne. He was a guy who said, something along the lines of, it feels like more like this show is drifting toward gotcha journalism, ready to just catch people who are screwing up. And I can't tell you, that is not true at all. Gotcha. Let's roll the tape and talk about this guy. Oregon State Representative Mike Neerman caught on surveillance video letting armed protesters into the state capitol back in December. This was during a special session. All of our lawmakers were there inside the building at the time, and according to several who I spoke to, they were told not to open the doors for this very reason. We also have some video from outside of the state capitol after Neerman opens the door there. A rush of protesters run around the corner and try to get inside. You can then see Neerman on the steps chatting with some of the protesters, and he too eventually goes back inside. Now, he's been getting in trouble for this, lots of trouble, but he still has his job. See, House Speaker Tina Kotek can't fire him from this for this. She did strip him of his committee assignments, and she fined him $2,000, but that's about as far as her powers can go. But that's not good enough for some people who want him gone entirely. 24 leaders from groups like Basic Rights Oregon, the NAACP, the Western State Center, they all signed on to the letter we have on your screen right now calling for the State House to expel him. This is possible, but it requires a 2/3 majority vote, which means 40 lawmakers. And right now there are 37 Democrats, so they would all need to vote for this, and some Republicans. But the people signing this letter are saying that this really shouldn't be a partisan issue.
This isn't about politics or partisanship. It's about the future of our democracy. The legislature needs to send a clear message that violence is never acceptable and that those who encourage and enable it have no place in the lawmaking process. Lawmakers are now going to work every day with someone in their midst who appears to have conspired with violent actors who tried to smash down doors to gain entry and assaulted journalists after Representative Neerman opened that door for them. No one who watches the security footage can believe he deserves to hold office and represent Oregonians.
So it's unclear how lawmakers as a whole feel about all of this, or a vote, but we can kind of guess one location or one group of people that might be happy with him gone, and that's his kind of hometown of Independence. And I say kind of because even though Neerman has an Independence address, he really lives outside of town, which is something the town's been very specific to let us know about. They've been trying to distance themselves from him since the story first broke. They actually sent out a press release to remind everyone that Neerman doesn't technically represent them. And then we get this from the mayor. He told OPB because of Neerman, we've had people that have lost business. We've had people who have canceled reservations. We have people who said, we were going to come visit your community, but we're not going to because of the actions of that person. Now, I don't know if all that is exactly true. I didn't call around to businesses down there. I will say personally, I rely a little more on Yelp reviews to make a choice on a restaurant than its vicinity to Mike Neerman. But that is quite a quote to get from the town's mayor. Neerman says, through all of this, he's spoken a few times, he doesn't condone or participate in violence, and that he and his family have been threatened over this, which is just awful. And if anybody is doing that, they should stop immediately. That's a terrible thing to do. He's also lashing out, though, at House Speaker Kotek, saying this is all a political attack on him. The man who was caught on camera opening the doors to the Capitol, letting in a violent mob, after being told not to open the doors to the Capitol because of the violent mob trying to get in. It kind of sounds a little bit more like simple math than complex politics, but it's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him. I'm going to tell you something that's hard to believe right now. I think it's hard to believe because I had to actually research it once I figured out what the story was we were doing today. But it's true. A white supremacist convicted of killing an Ethiopian immigrant in Portland is, number one, walking free among the rest of us right now, and number two, showing up at pro-Trump rallies and apparently getting into fights. The Oregonian has a story all about this, and we think it's worth your time. Kyle Brewster is one of three men who murdered Mulugeta Sarao back in southwest Portland in 1988, southeast Portland. Some of you probably remember when this happened because it was huge news at the time. Brewster served 13 years in prison for the crime and has been out since 2010. Reporters with the Oregonian and Willamette Week, as well as a group called Rose City Antifa, they spotted Brewster at a pro-Trump demonstration outside of the Oregon State Capitol on January 6th. The same day, if you remember, the mob stormed the U.S. Capitol. He was seen bleeding and bandaged and bragged on Facebook about getting into a fight with, quote, non-white immigrants. He was also spotted at a Proud Boys rally in Portland last fall. Now, I know those of you who lived here in the 80s probably do remember this and remember that horrible crime and that horrific murder. It got Portland branded as a skinhead city. We'd like to revisit right now what happened back then in the KGW vault.
The crime took place here on Southeast 31st early Sunday morning. Three black men, all from Ethiopia, were sitting in this car talking. When one left to head for his apartment, another car pulled up. Three young white men jumped out and began beating him. The other two Ethiopians never had a chance to stop it.
They have some kind of a stick or steel, I don't know. Just immediately they come, just hit and follow him around and kick him. After that, when I try to open the door, just immediately they hit me and I start the car, try to move, and they hit the car, broke everything.
There were also two women with the three skinheads, women who stayed in their car, but who shouted encouragement.
They never say anything, just the girls, they screaming inside, and they say, kill him, repeat him,
Dead is 27-year-old Mulugeta Sarao. Sarao came to the U.S. 7 years ago to attend Portland State University. And now, Sarao's uncle will have to explain to Sarao's parents in Ethiopia how something like this can happen in America.
Without provocation, somebody to be killed in front of his house with no motive, apparent motive, and no explanation. It just, I don't know what to tell my family. I can't believe this happened, and I don't expect them to believe me when I tell them.
Friends and family members of the murder victim gathered in his apartment today. Friends from as far away as Los Angeles. Almost all moved to the States from Ethiopia, believing that such racial incidents were things of the past.
And for this to come up now and to continue was a disgrace for the country. Nor would it say good about America.
Shocked, disbelief, and just outraged. Something like this would happen, some senseless, heinous crime would happen in front of somebody's house and without any provocation.
One of Sorrell's killers was sentenced to life in prison. He died there in prison in 2011. Brewster and the third guy, they got shorter sentences and again are both walking free tonight. If you've got an idea for the KGW Vault, let us know. There's a ton of information down there. Email us at thestory@kgw.com, or you can send me a message on Facebook. I'm pretty easy to find on there as well. We're going to finish this up with my conversation with Oregon's new Secretary of State, who's definitely hitting the ground running in more ways than one. We're back after this. Welcome back. Now, we spent a lot of time talking about the governor, and for good reason, but I want to spend a little time right now focusing on Oregon's second in command, Secretary of State Shemia Fagan. She was elected in November and just started her term a few weeks ago. Now, she's had a pretty quick rise in the political world. She was elected to the State House in 2013, the State Senate in 2019, and now she's the second in line to the governor after this most recent election win. And it's worth noting the Secretary of State position has been kind of a jumping off point for a run for Oregon's top office for some time. Tom McCall, for instance, Barbara Roberts, Kate Brown, all of them took that route from Secretary of State to governor. And we also know Governor Brown is term limited and her seat will open in 2 years. Given all that, I sat down with Fagan and tried to get her sense of the future of her ambitions.
I want to read the statement you sent out after taking your oath of office. On January 4th, I will be taking the oath of office to be sworn in as Oregon's next Secretary of State. My opportunity to serve as Oregon's Secretary of State and Lieutenant Governor is one of the greatest honors of my life. So did you just create a new position in the state, or what did you mean exactly by that? Because Oregon doesn't have a Lieutenant Governor.
Oregon doesn't have an office of Lieutenant Governor, but certainly we have a second in command. And the Secretary of State's website has indicated for a very long time under previous Secretaries of State that just like the Secretary of State serves as the auditor. Some states have a separate auditor. Our Secretary of State serves as the auditor, as the archivist. We serve as the Lieutenant Governor. As you look back as far as Barbara Roberts, Governor Atia and others would have her just oversee boards and commissions or work groups that had nothing to do really with the four functions of the Secretary of State's office, the divisions there, but kind of duties as assigned. And Oregon has long been a member, the Oregon Secretary of State's office has long been a member of the National Lieutenant Governors Association, which does train those folks who are second in command to basically step in if necessary, but to also be there on hand as an all hands on deck approach when we're facing a crisis like we are here in Oregon.
Some people are saying that maybe you're trying to set something up, maybe a potential desire to be governor. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I'm serving as Secretary of State. Oregonians just elected me in a pretty decisive victory in November. And as their Secretary of State, I will serve in the capacity of Lieutenant Governor, which is what the Oregon Secretary of State does. But as you noted during the campaign, Dan, don't serve as backup quarterback if you don't think that you're ready to serve as quarterback in the event that, the leading and the starting quarterback has an injury or something. And so to use that analogy, certainly Oregonians should know that if I was ever called upon to serve as governor for whatever reason, if Kate Brown couldn't serve for any reason, I would be ready to do that. I ran for this office, obviously knowing that was a possibility, but I am hard at work building my team as Secretary of State with a diverse, experienced team who's ready to serve Oregon on day one.
Now, Fagan also told me that she's planning a bus tour, kind of a van tour of all 36 counties to socially distantly, that's a word, to meet people in the community and talk like Secretary of State type stuff. But it really sounds like you're running for office. But we'll see. Let's see how it all shakes out. We're going to keep talking to her as we did in that interview. We talked about a lot of stuff, election security and redistricting, which her office might have to handle this year. We're going to get into that a lot more a little later this week. It is extremely important. My producer just got my ear and said, no comments tonight. We are out of time. That said, my tie is magenta or plum or fuchsia. I don't know. Big debate tonight. Huge topic. Let me know what you think. Use the hashtag HeyDan. Law Reporter's next. See you tomorrow.